Hey all, welcome to In Rogue. It's my new and latest blog site dedicated to ending the silence about childhood sexual abuse. I know we don't like to talk about it, but I have to talk about it because for far too long the silence surrounding childhood sexual abuse has allowed its continuance unabated. Now we all know that anyone registered as a sex offender is dangerous, right? We know this because they've been caught, tried, and convicted of sexual assault. We fear them. The problem is we can easily find out who they are. You can look at the registry of any state and see where the sex offenders live, how close they are to you, and you get their picture and their name. We have the ability to know where they are. These are not the sex offenders that scare me. The ones that scare me are the ones who aren't on the registry. The ones who scare me are the ones who have never been caught. And what's really bad about the ones that don't get caught is they've earned that good people status that has allowed people to turn a blind eye to the possibility that they are truly monsters who don't deserve any status at all. They hide in plain sight. They're your bankers, insurance brokers, pastors, musicians, artists, mechanics, sandwich makers, bus drivers, hairdressers, babysitters, plumbers, contractors, CEOs, managers, supervisors. They come from all walks of life. They don't look like the typical criminal. They have no mugshots, but they're out there, preying on children right under our noses, and nobody's talking about it. So today, and because it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month, I want to talk about it. The following presentation was intended for a church audience, specifically the AME Church, African Methodist Episcopal, for those that don't know. That's the church I grew up in, and they played a significant role in why I'm doing this. I recently told a friend, their silence is the making of me. But this is not just for the AME Church, it's also for the Catholic Church and every other denomination that would hide the sexual abuse of children. It's also for the population at large. As the adult survivor that I am, I find it difficult to find help to deal with the trauma of childhood sexual abuse. With all the new studies out, the focus has mainly been on prevention of abuse in the first place. And this is extremely important work. But I'm of the opinion that this work must include talking about childhood sexual abuse outside of the research and the medical context. I believe that bringing awareness to the adult survivors and raising our voices to bring light to the magnitude will be the catalyst that helps eliminate childhood sexual abuse. I believe that lifting my voice will empower others to lift their voice, and in so doing, give children the power they need to prevent and or stop any current abuse. That is my intention here. So please listen. There are 4 parts to this series. This first part deals with statistics.
Hello, my name is Tia. Today we're going to talk about adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. Now, when some people discuss this, they use the initial CSA to discuss it. I will not. Along with childhood sexual abuse, I will discuss the long-term effects and the role of religion. Before we start, I have to get some things out of the way. Now, many people are religious in some way. For most of us, we have a belief system that helps direct our life. Our religion or our belief system plays a significant role in our views about sex. But most of us are uncomfortable talking about sex. So, I want to start by asking a few questions. Okay, first, when you were growing up, were you taught or led to believe that sex is dirty or nasty? Okay. Second, do you still believe it? And my final question for you is, are you still a virgin? Okay, now I want you to keep all these things in mind, okay, because in this presentation, you are going to hear things that you don't normally hear in religious conversations, okay? I'm going to use words like sex. sexual abuse, vagina, penis, intercourse, penetration. I'm also going to use curse words, the really bad ones. You see, because there is no clean version here. There's no clean version. I'm also going to give you statistics. Now, as many of you know, statistics are numbers that represent the magnitude of a problem. We look at these numbers with that understanding, but the numbers don't give you a real picture. So, what I do when I present statistics is I put a face to them. So today, when I present these statistics, I am going to present you myself, a picture of me. This is personal. I'm not going to tell you what happened to me, but I will use poetry to tell you how it feels. Because again, there is no clean version. Forgiveness ain't enough when your love is tough. Forgiving covers them, supposing to free you from the mayhem. Forgive, it's your freedom. Forgive, don't condemn. Forgive and forget, forgive without regret. Can we forgive and forsake the wave of hurt as our heart breaks? Can we forgive and move on without taking up arms? Forgiveness, it's priceless, though the cost is without measure. Sometimes in forgiveness we find no pleasure. For forgiveness need not be received by those who would deceive. Forgiveness is not without guilt or remorse. Its freedom is letting go, of course. Letting go, forgiveness. Are they one and the same? Letting go and forgiveness. Who feels the shame? Letting go, freedom, they say. Forgive and forget, come what may. I forgive, I don't forget. I let go with much regret. My Christian self says this is wrong. My other self says stand strong. You won't forget, but you must move on. You must let go. You must stay strong. I wish this on no one. I have no advice to give, for in forgiveness and remembrance is where I must live. I cannot forget, and forgiveness is but a step to moving past the ignorance of no regret. To start, I'm gonna give you some statistics because they're easy, Just ease you on into it, okay? So, from 2009 to 2013, Child Protective Service agencies substantiated claims that 63,000 children a year were victims of sexual abuse. That is close to 1/2 of the entire Philadelphia school district. And as you see here, 34% of those victims are under the age of 12. The big statistic, that 93%, know their abuser. 80% of the abusers are the parent. These 63,000 victims under 18 represent 67% of all reported sexual assault. But this is not the whole story. Now, in the last slide, you heard that 67% of reported rapes are from people under the age of 18. And that's not the end. There are over 60 million survivors of childhood sexual abuse in America. 20% of the population. 90% of the survivors never report. I am one of those survivors. Helpless, hopeless. Help means distress, a call put forth, a signal without worth, peace not found, memories abound, forsaken, taken. Help is awakened. I need that which is out of reach. Can't bend it, can't teach. The need, the desire, hope it requires. Throughout the mire, the muck it devours. Why I gotta feel to make the appeal. I'm wrong in my request, but on my thanks they rest. Thankful I am, resentment be damned. Take me for me, my beauty to see. It is ugly on sight, but you know not my plight. I am born of shame, of parents in a game. They sought their peace, in me their life to cease. I didn't ask them, nor did I condemn theirs or mine, this life undefined. I held out 48 years, cried the tears, lived the fears. Think you that I would dry my own crying eye to uplift you in uncertainty? To navigate my personality? I may be wrong, I may even be strong, but I do know this myself is life in bliss. I am aware I chose not to stare nor challenge your beliefs, for it is a fallacy and your relief. You believe about me only that which you want to see, never asking a question, only making an assumption. I know this well, for it is my whole life that can tell you want not my best, only comfort at my behest. To be different and at odds serves not your tender facade. Truth shatters, leaving us both in tatters. But truth is all I've got, and unfortunately not what you sought. For truth you must confront that the you that you've become, not the you that is the truth, but that lie of your youth. The youth of you who knows true, the ugly beauty and the truth of you. Now let's talk about sex. Since the beginning of creation, sex has existed. The first knowledge of good and evil that came to Adam and Eve was that they were naked. This was no accident. Since then, the Bible is full of admonitions against sexual immorality. We find prohibition after prohibition against sexual immorality. As a church, sex is discussed in terms of abstinence and promiscuity, all in the context of marriage and procreation. The words in the first column were never used when discussed in the biblical context, but it is these words I want to focus on. Okay, so focusing on those words, sexual intercourse can be vaginal or anal. The penis penetrates the vagina or the anus. Now, this is sexual intercourse, and I'm aware that you know this, but I'm saying it because this is the language that is rarely used to discuss sex. Now, at the end of this list is menstruation, which is rarely, if ever, associated with sex. In my experience, young girls have come to me asking about menstruation, and I directed them to talk to their parents because it's a subject we don't like to talk about, right? And she told me at the age of 12, that her mother said, you don't need to know anything about that because it's nasty. Menstruation, it's nasty. But the onset of menstruation signifies the coming of womanhood. You know, that transition into womanhood. A woman has the ability to have children. Her body begins producing eggs. Now, it's part of the process called puberty. When men hit that age of puberty, their sperm becomes a seed. Their sperm becomes a seed. That seed is what fertilizes the egg. Menstruation is a big part of talking about sex because fertilization of the egg happens through sexual intercourse. Fertilization happens through sexual intercourse. The penis ejaculates during sexual intercourse. We call that an orgasm. But here's what's funny about this orgasmic experience. Bringing a woman to an orgasm has no bearing on the fertilization of an egg. A woman having an orgasm isn't even required for ejaculation. The sole purpose of a woman having an orgasm is pleasure. It's not necessary for anything except a woman's pleasure. But unfortunately, it's not required. And some women don't find sexual satisfaction. But that's another story. Now, also on this list is masturbation, for obvious reasons. Masturbation is the sexual self-stimulation whose only purpose is to produce an orgasm. Now, there are prohibitions against this. Okay? Prohibitions based on Genesis chapter 38, verses 9 and 10. Onan. Onan spilled his seed on the ground and God killed him. And the church has interpreted this to mean that any sex that does not fulfill the object of procreation is a sin. All sex that does not fulfill the object of procreation is a sin. My problem with that is a woman can't spill her seed through masturbation. A woman spills her seed. No, she doesn't spill her seed. Her seed dies through menstruation. It's a natural process. It happens naturally. So the prohibition against masturbation, especially for women, doesn't seem to, it doesn't carry much weight. Okay, because, again, a woman having an orgasm has no bearing on the fertilization of a seed. Again, probably another story. So, we've all been taught about the wrongness of sex. We believe that sex is dirty or nasty, but we've all had sex. Some have been sexually used, some have been sexually abused. But talking about it is a taboo that we must overcome. I'm hard pressed, boiled hard, stressed. I have no flow but many words, speaking loud, unheard. Self-destruction, reconstruction, it all feels the same. Who's to blame? Should we give it a name? Names give life. Who pays the price? That light you see when darkness abounds? The end of a tunnel? Or a train coming round? Tunnel or train wreck, is your life in check? Are you prepared? Are you impaired? Shrug your shoulders, it's only a few boulders. I've handled thus far the broken pieces safe in my jar, the jar of my heart tearing me apart. Don't hesitate to speak, silence makes you weak. Think not of the past, that will never last. It's now, never, never. Bet you think I'm clever. Just words from a heart that's been torn all apart, learning to be whole because the story must be told. Alright, now that we got sex out the way, let's talk about childhood sexual abuse. What is it? What does it look like? Now, child prostitution, child pornography, we all know that that's wrong. That's like the obvious thing. We all know it's wrong. But then there's being bathed in a way that feels intrusive. We'll talk about that in a minute. Being made to pose for seductive or sexual photographs. Having your breast area, your abdomen, genital area, inner thigh, or butt fondled, or being asked or forced to do this by an authority figure, or even an older youth. Experiencing finger or object penetration of the rectum and or the vagina area. Being forced or exposed to hearing or watching adults or teens having sex. Now, some of these seem fairly obvious, right? If you do these things to a child, it is wrong. We know this. But that second one, bathing. Now, as a parent, bathing is a part of the process. We have to bathe our children. Our children need to be cleaned every day. Especially if you're like one of my kids who likes to play in the dirt all the time. So, when does bathing become intrusive? It could be prolonged rubbing of the genitals, rubbing the genital areas without a washcloth. Now, These things are shocking to hear, but even more shocking to hear is children can be sexually stimulated. I'm going to say that again. Children can be sexually stimulated. Oh my gosh. Seriously? Yes. It can feel good. And because it feels good, it can make the child feel even more guilty for being violated. Think about that for a little bit. Think about that. Because there are people, older people, who have been raped and experienced an orgasm in being raped. And it's one of the reasons why they don't report. They don't tell that part. Sex is a bodily function, and it doesn't take much to stimulate the sexual function. Sometimes it's just a picture. Now, even as adults, we can get involuntarily sexually stimulated. So can a child. The sex drive is controllable, but it's still a drive. Okay? There is an animalistic nature found in this drive, and once it's engaged, instinct takes over. You do what comes naturally. But if somebody's raping you, you're not doing it willingly. It happens naturally because that's how it works. Okay? But just because your body functioned the way it was supposed to function doesn't mean you wanted this to happen. We have to take that into account when we're talking about these things, because while sex is voluntary, the involuntariness of an orgasm, well, when's the last time you could stop yourself from having an orgasm? When's the last time you ever tried to stop yourself from having an orgasm when you were led to that point? Okay? Children can be so stimulated. They may not have an orgasm, or they may. We don't really know that yet. But it's possible for a child to be sexually stimulated, and we need to keep that in mind, because when we tell a child it's not their fault, they're still feeling ashamed because it felt good. It sometimes it felt good. And you have to keep that in mind when you're talking to a child who has been a victim of sexual abuse. That does not mean it's their fault. Ever. 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 Now, this is what childhood sexual abuse feels like. It's like dropping a boulder on a child's shoulder. As the child struggles under the weight of it, he or she is literally gasping for air while the bones are crushing. The body grows under the weight of this boulder, and the child learns to carry it. But because it's still a boulder, the child continues to fight against the weight of it. As the child matures, they accept that the boulder is theirs to carry and settle into acceptance. But the weight of the boulder doesn't change, and the fight against it continues. As an adult, he or she no longer even acknowledges the boulder. It's simply part of life. Until one day, a memory brings on the crushing weight of the boulder. The fight begins anew, and the boulder hasn't changed. Its weight is as overwhelming as it was on those dark days of childhood. The weight of it has caused major physical ailments, heart disease, high blood pressure, and such. And while trying to forget the weight of the boulder, drugs and alcohol were used to numb the pain. Anxiety and depression become close companions. But the boulder hasn't changed. I'm 50 years old, and it's still too heavy. There's blood on my hands, I know not from whence it came, but there it is, bright as can be, someone's blood I cannot name. Is it mine? Surely not. But whose then is this blood that I've got? I tried to wash my hands to remove the unknown stain. Water touched my hands and through me went searing pain. The pain was a journey, one I hoped would end soon, through a heart full of hardness, grief, a rhythmless tune. There was darkness there. I found myself afraid. How could any human being live in such a way? This nameless blood that I found on my hand was bound to that heart, though I did not understand. The heart, the blood, my hands have they touched, though I know not why. It haunts me so much. There's blood on my hands, from whence it came I know not, but there it is, bright as can be, this blood that I've got.